Here in session 103, we're going to still deal with fractional equations, but this time we're going to need to use the quadratic formula to solve it. Let's take a look at our first equation here. We have 5 over x plus 2 equals x over 3. Now then, in order to be able to add numbers together when one of them is a fraction, we have to make fractions out of both and get a common denominator. Well, we can go ahead and place a 1 underneath a 2. That hasn't changed the value at all. Let's take a look at our three denominators, x, 1, and 3. There are no common factors among x, 1, and 3. So to find our common denominator, we need to multiply them together. X times 1 is x times 3 is 3x. So what we need to do now is to multiply both sides of the equation by 3x. So we're going to have 3x now times 5 over x plus 2 over 1. That'll take care of our left side. Then on the right side, we're going to have 3x times x over 3. Now let's go ahead and carry out and distribute through the multiplication here. 3x times 5 over x is going to be the same thing as 15x over x. 3x times 2 over 1 is going to be 6x over 1. That takes care of our left side. Then on our right side, we have 3x times x over 3. Well, that would be 3x squared over 3. Once again, we don't have a common denominator yet, but by multiplying by that common denominator, we've created terms now that can be reduced. Let's take a look here. 15x over x. The x over x cancel to a 1. That leaves us 15 times 1, which is just 15. That takes care of our first term. 15x over x reduces to 15. 6x over 1 simply reduces to 6x. And then on the right-hand side, the 3 and the 3 here cancel, leaving a 1. 1 times x squared is simply x squared. So we now have 15 plus 6x equals x squared. At this point, we have removed the fraction from the equation. We've created an equivalent equation whereby our fraction has been removed. Now we can start dealing with it a little bit more easily. Let's go ahead and rewrite this in standard format. Well, the 6x is going to have to come over to this side, and the 15 is going to have to come over. So what that's going to do, in order to get it to the other side, we have to subtract the 6x from both sides. And then we have to subtract the 15 from both sides. So that's going to leave us then the quadratic equation of x squared minus 6x minus 15 equals 0. And once again, all we did here is we subtracted 6x from both sides. That got rid of that. We subtracted 15 from both sides. That got rid of that from the left side. So then we had a minus 6x and a minus 15 to tack on to the same side that the x squared is. And then I just simply rewrote it here with the x squared and the minus 6x and the minus 15 on the left-hand side. At this point now, we have our algebraic or our quadratic equation in standard form. Now that it's in standard form, we can go ahead and use the quadratic formula. And because we're going to require some more room, what I've done now is I've copied over this quadratic equation, x squared minus 6x minus 15, over to our next screen. Also, we're going to be solving this using the quadratic formula. Our quadratic formula states that x is going to be equal to minus b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Well, what is a over here? A is the coefficient of the x squared. Well, that coefficient is 1. Even though we don't see it, 1 is still there. 1 times x squared is the same thing as x squared. What's b? Well, b is our coefficient for our x to the first term. b is minus 6. And then c is our constant, which is minus 15. and this here is all equal to 0. Now that we know what A, B, and C are, we're going to plug those values into this quadratic formula here. X is going to equal minus B. Well, B is minus 6, so minus B is a positive 6. So we have 6 plus or minus, then the square root of B squared. Well, what is B? Well, B is minus 6. What is minus 6 squared? Minus 6 squared is 36, positive 36. That takes care of our B squared minus 4 times A. Well, A is 1 times C. C is negative 15. That takes care of the top portion. Then in the bottom portion goes 2 times A. A is 1, so 2 times 1 is simply 2. Now let's go ahead and take this out a little bit further, simplify what we have in there. That's going to be equal to 6 plus or minus the square root of, what is 4? Negative 4 times 1 is negative 4. Negative 4 times negative 15 is positive 60. So what we really have here is 36 plus 60. 36 plus 60 is 96. And that is still over 2. Now, if we take a look at our 96 here, we can break that down smaller and simplify it because 96 has, as one of its factors, a square. And what that square is the number 16. So let's go ahead and rewrite this. X is going to be equal to 6 plus or minus the square root of 16 times 6 over 2. Simplifying further, this is going to be equal to 6 plus or minus, well, the square root of 16 is 4, and that still leaves us with a radical 6 on the inside, and then a 2 on the bottom. Each of these terms here can, or has, a common factor of 2, so we can even simplify this further. 6 over 2 is 3, plus or minus 4 over 2 is 2 times radical 6. So the two possible answers we have to our equation here are x equals 3 plus 2 radical 6, and then the other one is 3 minus 2 radical 6. And once again, we don't have the space or time here to double check this on this video here, but always take your answers, plug them back into the original equation, and see if in fact they produce answers that are true. Because remember, when you are solving algebraic or especially algebraic equations, especially where you have a variable in the denominator, through your algebraic processes, you can actually create a situation where a new solution is introduced that is not a solution to your original equation. So always take your answers back to your original equation, plug them in, and see if they work. And that's basically here what this review just says. That'll wrap up then session 103 on fractional equations using the quadratic formula.